What's going on, everyone? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran, and I usually like helping people with a spiritual perspective, but today it's actually going to be a different kind of video, and the reason that I'm making this video is because I have been tired of hearing people say 2020 is the worst year and that it sucks and that it's so horrible. And most of these people are saying all this stuff on their phone made by some kid while they're taking a shit in the bathroom. So I'm sick of hearing that because 2020 is not that bad. And I will give you 10 reasons why, 10 years that were worse, okay? So has it been a great year this year? Obviously, I'm not saying this year has been good. We had wildfires in Australia that devastated millions of acres and some millions of animals. Kobe Bryant died. A lot of people liked him. I did as well. And his daughter and the other people on board the helicopter. And then, of course, obviously, COVID-19, which, of course, thousands and thousands of people have lost work. Their livelihoods, their homes. Many people I've seen homeless. People have lost family members to it. I think around 1 million people have died worldwide. So hasn't been a great year. I'm not saying 2020 is something we should all just put some huge positive spin on it and ignore the reality. No, not at all. But we should be grateful and we should understand where we come from, okay? Because in comparison to some other years, even pretty recent ones, we're actually very lucky. Okay, and 2020 wasn't all bad news. For instance, Donald Trump didn't get elected again. Well, that's pretty good news because that man was a moron. So that's pretty good. And I'm not being political or anything like that. I don't care about Biden. The guy could have a stroke in 6 months. The same doesn't matter to me. But if anybody with any objectivity at all would know that Trump was a moron and not a good leader. So that's some good news, and that should be something we should all be very happy about. But anyway, moving on from topics that are divisive, let's just get into it. Okay, these are in no particular order. There's definitely more than 10 years that are worse than this one. I mean, Jesus, I don't even know what was going on in the year 1200, but I would rather live in 2020 than the year 1200. I don't even give up. I don't know what the fuck was going on then, but nothing. I would way rather be here. 1200 probably lived to be like 30. So yeah, I don't think so. So let's get into it. And there are some years that I'm clumping together, maybe some that I'm not clumping together. But however it works out is how it works out. Because I could obviously just include all of World War II, and that's like 5 years right there. So I'm going to do 10 individual years, okay? All right, guys, let's get started. I have a pizza in the oven. And I want to eat it. I want to put it in my mouth, and I want to rub the juices down my body. Okay, let's go. Number 1, 1347. Now, what the hell was going on in 1347? Did people even have ball in a cup back then? Well, probably not, but the U.S. wasn't even around, so you might not even care. However, 1347 does have a significance, and not only is the amount of times that I've masturbated in my lifetime, but also because it was the start of the bubonic plague, or the Black Death, as it's often called, which lasted until 1351. That ended up killing 200 million people, killed off a third of Europe. Vomiting, fever, fatigue, delirium, pain in the back and limbs, apathy, sleeplessness, headaches, intolerance to light, Jesus Christ, and caused lymph nodes to swell in the groins and armpits. All that was the symptoms. The fatality rate was much worse than COVID, and the symptoms were much worse as well. And people your neighbors would just be dying. It ended up mass starvation, depopulation of cities, as well as causing many peasant revolts. The only really good thing that can be said to come out of the Black Death, the plague, was that it really did end feudalism and helped hygiene initiatives, which I also suspect are going to sort of happen because of COVID as well. I mean, Jesus, COVID had to teach us all to wash our hands when we got home. I mean, Christ, the amount of stuff that we touched during a day, we should have been doing that anyway. Oh, well. Number 2, 1520. So 1520 was smallpox. And this is a pretty good year. You might have already heard this. A lot of history books cover this. But smallpox was pretty deadly. It ravaged and destroyed the Aztec Empire. Okay, that's nearly 25% of it anyway. Destroyed nearly 25% of it. Imagine if 25% of the United States just dropped dead. Well, I know what you're thinking. Well, it's not so bad if it's the Southeast, right? Georgia, Florida. Well, maybe not. But still, it would be a lot of people. The United States is around 360 million people, and 25% of that is, hold on one second, type, tap, tip, toop, 90 million people or something. That's a crazy amount of people. Now, obviously, the Aztecs didn't have that many people in the first place, but their empire was ravaged still when the Spanish came over, and anywhere from 5 to 8 million people died. That's the decimation of a whole group of people that do not exist today, and that seems pretty bad compared to 2020. Number 3, 1919. That's a nice number right there, but not what followed. Now, the Spanish flu. Now, World War I had just ended, and that was a lot of people, and that makes it in the list later on, but only to invite a massive pandemic into the world. 1/3 of the U.S. population was affected in only 2 years. I might have said affected there, infected. Infected people. 100 million people died worldwide. That's fucking crazy. The numbers do vary, but still, I've seen anywhere from 50 to 100 million people died worldwide. Still, way more than COVID. Also that year, the Russian Civil War began, and that would be a fun event that would lead to the eventual rise of Joseph Stalin, setting the stage for World War II. Okay, it's also said to have infected over 500 million people. Whereas COVID again, around 73 million infected, around 1.5 million deaths. We should be grateful, folks. Also because you don't live in 1919. I mean, seriously, what the fuck was going on? 20th century was absolutely nuts. Number 4, 1939. Now, 1939, you may understand already from history books. Pretty much every country in the world was affected. And obviously, I said before that this is an individual year, but this is, of course, spanning till 1945. But this is World War II, guys. World War II started, at least with the declaration of war, I suppose, when Poland was invaded. Personally, I think Hitler should have invaded somewhere with nice beaches, but Poland he chose, and that's fine, I suppose. But you obviously already know about the 6 million some deaths across Europe with the Jewish population. It wasn't just Jews, it was gypsies, the disabled, certain religious groups, Jehovah's Witnesses, I believe, are also killed off. 2 nuclear bombs dropped on Japan in Hiroshima and Nagasaki that would kill over 200,000 people and affect thousands more after that through defects or birth defects, any offspring like that affected because of the radiation. It's also estimated that World War II killed 75 million people during those 5 or 6 years there. And that's not including, obviously how many people were injured or displaced, right? And of course, this opened up the stage for the Cold War, which would basically create the realities of the Vietnam and Korean War, among many other conflicts in Europe and Asia. I'd say those years fucking sucked. Number 5, 1783, volcano eruption. Now, this volcano erupted in Iceland. I believe it was called Laki. I don't know if there's a name of the volcano or wherever in Iceland. But what happened is that it caused so much sulfur dioxide to go into the atmosphere of the world that it actually changed the climate of most of the world that whole year. And in India in particular suffered really badly because they weren't able to have that rainy season, which would have been good for their crops and agriculture. So basically, a volcano caused the death of 11 million people. 11 million Indians starved to death. So a volcano killing more people than COVID. That's crazy. Number 6, 1848, Irish famine. About 1 million people died during the famine, a little bit less than COVID, which nearly led to 2 million people, Irish people, basically fucking off somewhere else. Most Irish people, or people of Irish descent, live outside of Ireland to this day, all because of this Irish famine, right? Most of them went to North America. Also, during this year, there were a few revolts across Europe due to civil unrest. Tens of thousands of people just died violently, often in the streets, and over 50 countries were affected, as well as their governments, okay? So that does not sound like a great year either. Number 7, 2001, to a terror attack, okay? Now, I know that this doesn't seem like it didn't kill a lot of people, but it was very, very significant, and I'm putting this on there even though not a huge number of people died, but because of its effect on the world. The culture of the world changed. The United States culture definitely changed, unparalleled, I would argue. It changed America for the worse, I would also argue, turning them into a bully in the world's eyes, and it eventually led to a failed war for unjustifiable purposes, which we later found out, in the Middle East on false pretenses. Since 2001, there's been huge increases in terror attacks across the world, North America, Europe, all over the place, and no real true gain for the rest of the country, not in my opinion anyway, and it changed the way that we travel, it changed security, it changed attitudes, it shifted everything, the media, everything changed the world in a massive way. I would say that that was a very significant year that I would argue was worse than this one. Number 8, 1492, Columbus. So we all know that we had a holiday after Columbus. I'm not sure if it's still around anymore since we've all sort of understood that he loved to rape and do all those kinds of fun stuff. But the fun-loving rape boy Columbus sailed over here to the Americas, bringing disease and war with him. This would lead to 90% of the indigenous population being wiped out, a whopping 55 million people in total. Also, that same year, we saw the Spanish government kill or enslave or expel over 500,000 Muslims, causing 2,000 years of relative peaceful cohabitation in Europe to come to an end. Doesn't sound too good there, guys, either. We've already talked about the Aztecs earlier in the video. Number 9, 1933, the Great Depression. This period of economic depression led to over 13 million people being unemployed in the United States. That's 1/4 of homes no longer had an income. This also saw the rise of Hitler in Europe, and we've already mentioned, and you already know how that all went. Great Depression, that was not fun. Not that I would know from personal experience, unless you count the times that I've indulged in chocolates and potato chips and marijuana and have felt a Great Depression, but I haven't actually lived through the economic Great Depression, and I imagine that it sucked dicks. Number 10, 1914. Now, 1914 actually started off really great, but this was the year of World War I. Okay, around the summertime, what happened, and there was many reasons that led up to World War I, but the biggest one, or the catalyst for it, was Archduke Ferdinand's assassination. And a little aside to that, very funny story, the guy who assassinated him actually was late to where he was supposed to be. And he missed his opportunity. I can't quite remember if it was because he was late, but he did miss his opportunity, and he went to go to some side street cafe to essentially get a beer or just relax or get a coffee, whatever what he was drinking. And the guy who was driving the limo of Archduke Ferdinand took a wrong turn and went down that street where the assassin was sitting outside enjoying some kind of drink or whatnot. And of course, he took his opportunity and killed the guy. I think that's amazing how those things work out. So Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated. World War I led to 40 million people dying around that. Again, not sure about the injuries, displacements, in horrific ways, of course. Chemical warfare, needless loss. The trench warfare was a terrible idea. And this was all less than 30 years before another 75 million people would die in World War II. Right. So some runner-ups that we have is 1968. That was a rough one. Kennedy was assassinated. Martin Luther King was killed. Martin Luther King Jr., I mean. Vietnam War was going on. There was a whole bunch of student protests. The Tet Offensive. Messy, messy year. And we can also attribute this to many years throughout the 20th century. A lot of them weren't great. And by comparison, these are just 10 years. Just 10 that I've picked that are infinitely, in my opinion, worse than 2020. Okay? So we should all be a little bit grateful. Stop complaining about 2020 being such a horrible year. These things tend to happen. There's so much more. Imagine how people felt during these wars. Imagine people felt during the bubonic plagues. People, your neighbors, just dying off. Like, that's insane. So let's be grateful for what we have. Let's understand our place. Let's not put toxic positivity on 2020 either. It wasn't a great year, but I do this video in hopes, and because, again, I was tired of hearing people complain about this year, that in hopes that we can all just go into 2021 with a better attitude and stop complaining about everything and make some changes in our life. Because ultimately, 2020 will be a year that will shape our future. And I hope it will shape it positively, because we've seen how it's affected our view of the media, which was never really positive to begin with, how it spread fear and propaganda, misinformation, bias. We've seen so much this year. The government's inability to help people, how they've tried to help, measly checks across the world and supposed to take care of people, failings across the world. We've all started to wake up to the bullshit, and we should all, of course, start taking care of ourselves and our health better, which we should have been doing anyway. If you don't wash your hands when you get home, I don't really know what you're doing. And I've had to learn this year as well. It makes sense when you really think about it. All the stuff that we touch, we should be taking better care of ourselves. Anyway, guys, I hope this video was helpful. I hope it brought a smile to your face. I hope it didn't bring a frown to your face, but if it did bring a frown to your face, I guess I don't really care. Not a great attitude to have, but what can you do? Because this year wasn't that bad. So I'm living happy. I hope you guys are living happy. I hope that you guys do sincerely enjoy and have a better 2021, and I hope that the world gets back to some sense of balance. Okay, guys, I'm signing off now. I'm going to go eat that pizza. You guys enjoy the rest of your year. Bye.